Um, AnaOno was the first clothing company that the Untours Foundation invested in. We were drawn to the economic focus that Dana brings to manufacturing of her products. She offered an answer to fast fashion. What we didn't know when we selected her was that she would create a beloved and powerful platform, a conversation, a voice for breast cancer survivors, patients, and previvors, a new term for me. And it's with that voice that's landed her on magazine covers and in New York City for Fashion Week, really doing awesome work. Our foundation invests in world-enhancing businesses like AnaOno by using our full endowment as a revolving loan fund. And we inspire other businesses and other corporations and other foundations to do the same by taking their endowments and investing them in ways that match their missions instead of ways that harm their missions. It's through this advocacy work that we met Glenn Mead, an investment management company that knows how to match mission and values with investments. They've been a pleasure for us to work with, and we're really honored that they're sponsoring our cyber events. AnaOno just celebrated its 10th anniversary and did so in part with Dana spending 10 hours live on social media. So with that training, 1 hour with us will be a cakewalk. So Dana, we're eager to hear your story, to hear about AnaOno, how you're doing through COVID, how you're doing today with riots in Philadelphia around your building. We're eager to hear.
All right. Wow. Thank you so much for such a lovely introduction, Elizabeth. Thank you for always being there to support me, Brian, for having such an incredible organization, and to all of you that have joined us here for Lunch and Learn. My name is Dana Donafrey. I'm the founder and CEO of AnaOno, Intimates Designed Differently. We started 10 years ago now, which is crazy. I did do this wild thing of 10 hours with Dana on the internet. It was quite exhausting, to say the least, but a trick to that is pre-record some of it. But that being said, secret to the sauce. But really, you know, AnaOno's story is 10 years old because it starts with my story. And 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with a early stage breast cancer diagnosis at the age of 27. I received my diagnosis a day before my birthday and 2 months before my planned wedding. Not at all did I have a reason that breast cancer was going to affect me personally in my life. Didn't have a strong enough family history to understand, you know, the whole scope of what breast cancer actually was. And at that point in time, 10 years ago, really had no idea that young women even got breast cancer. It was definitely a different conversation 10 years ago, of which case AnaOno has been paving the way to change the way that we talk about breast cancer as a disease as a whole, but also myself being an advocate and activist in the space. So we just aren't here to disrupt mastectomy. We're actually here to change the way that people see mastectomy. It's a very, very different shift. And it's something I've really leaned into recently because as we know, with so much going on in the world, conversations need to get broadened, they need to change, they need to be more inclusive. And sadly and unfortunately, breast cancer is no longer an old white woman's disease. This is a disease that is affecting many different walks of life, has literally no bounds, no discrimination. We have people that have been diagnosed at 18 years of age receiving their double mastectomies before their high school graduations, up till, you know, those beautiful, lovely grandmothers that we all care dearly for. Bianca, just here over my shoulder, received an ovarian cancer diagnosis at the age of 11, received her breast cancer diagnosis in her early 20s. So we know that this is something that's much more complicated than what we've ever even addressed or viewed or looked at. And AnaOno is really here to help change that conversation, but also to empower those that are afflicted by this cancer diagnosis in their life. And what does that mean exactly? My cancer journey took me through a double mastectomy with breast reconstruction. I did 6 rounds of chemotherapy, a year of a targeted receptor medicine for my type of breast cancer, And then I was on hormonal therapies and suppressions for 8.5 years. So technically I've only been out of treatment for about 1.5 to 2 years now. And that's what a cancer patient looks like today. The good news is that we're living longer, living fuller lives, having more opportunity to be who we want to be and celebrate our uniqueness, to celebrate our difference. Whereas before, you know, there was a much higher death rate when it came to cancer. So there was limited moments of survival that, of course, all you were focusing on was the moments to live. Now we actually get to be ourselves and live those moments fully. And that's what AnaOno is really here to help cherish, lead, and support in whatever way, shape, and form that comes in. So when we say that we are intimates designed differently, the idea behind that is that, again, about the empowerment and the support. When you undergo a breast surgery, which all cancer patients will undergo, there are more than 300,000 women a year that are diagnosed. And let's not forget, men get breast cancer too, but not every man wears a bra. So I'm going to specifically talk about women in this case. But 300,000 women a year are diagnosed with breast cancer. And every single one of them, for the most case, will undergo a breast surgery. The only ones that don't undergo a breast surgery immediately are those that are diagnosed de novo, which means that the breast cancer has already spread beyond the breast. So removing the breast tissue doesn't necessarily stop the progression of the disease. The fact is we're still treating breast cancer very, very aggressively for a lot of different reasons. COVID has changed that. Our cancer diagnoses are down over 50%. Doesn't mean that there's less cancer. It just means that less people are going out for their screenings, receiving follow-up tests and exams and things like that that they needed to, which then a diagnosis is at the other end of that result. We're likely to just see more late-stage diagnoses than what we have before in the past. It's either going to be the best or the worst human experience or experiment. We're not going to really know until 5 years after COVID. But that being said, our environment has been affected dramatically by COVID. For good and bad reasons. Diagnoses are down, that's a bad reason. That's something that we really have to pay attention to in our health and advocacy movement. But in life, surgeries have changed as well. So we really empower all surgical decisions, from the removal of breasts to removing partial parts of the breast, undergoing radiation therapy, or anything to the such. So we are really here to provide resources from the point of recovery through treatment and into the life beyond. And we do that because if you have 2 breasts, 1 breast, no breasts, or new breasts, we really literally have something for you to feel confident and empowered in after your diagnoses. This is a huge shift in how we see mastectomy. Mastectomy has always been seen as the full removal of the breast tissue, of which case then bras were required, to where you would insert a breast prosthesis into the pocket of the bra, so that way you can mimic the shape of breasts underneath your clothing. That's been the intention of mastectomy for the last 40 plus years. Me as a young woman, also my young women counterparts, want to celebrate our lives no matter if we have breasts or no breasts, or if we want to wear a breast form or not wear a breast form. So all of these surgical outcomes yield different results. And a traditional bra no longer fits these bodies. So what we've really done is we've designed the bras to fit the body, the unique bodies and shapes that our customers have. So again, we use multiple stretch fabrics. We have beautiful, super soft materials. And when we talk about sustainability, this is a modal material that we use. That's very, very important to us. It's a certified modal material, meaning that any beech tree that is harvested in effort to make this unique fiber, which is really fantastic for our patients, a new one is planted in its place. And this is really important to us as a company, because I think doing good business is doing environmentally friendly business and sustainable business. We don't have to be wasteful. We can be mindful about the way that we work. And modal is so great because it's like buttery, silky, soft to the skin. So everybody should love this fiber to begin with, but it's actually also naturally antimicrobial, anti-wicking. So it really helps absorb the hot and the heat away from the body and absorb it out into the air. It's incredibly soft to the touch. It can be washed, which is really important for our surgical patients as well, because you might have scarring or incisions or ooze, things like that that you don't necessarily want to see every time you put on your bra. So you can wash it and clean that out. but it's also incredibly flexible and malleable. You can kind of see our post-surgical bra here. It's our #1 style. This side has a pad in it. This side is flat. So you can kind of see how we talk to our customers. But this whole thing is just super soft and gummy, and it's so, so soft against the skin. Back here, now that I realized we were doing a test earlier, but this is our drain belt robe where the tubes come out of the patient following their surgery. So these actually are bulbs that will increase with fluid, and you have to empty these fluids. So we have a recovery line that helps patients manage that and be able to wrap themselves up, tie themselves up, and leave the hospital with their dignity and femininity intact. And you can see Janine here in the back. If you look all the way back, she's actually missing a breast on her left side. And this is just how beautiful and confident and proud she is in her own skin. And this is why this material, these designs, this whole process is so important to our customers and patients that we serve. Untours had really honestly played a pivotal role in our growth. And as Elizabeth said, you know, when we first met, we weren't really sure if I was in scope to the work that Untours does so beautifully. But I think what we have to remember is, especially times like this, especially the way that we've created and made our business makes us more accessible to people around the world than any of our competitors. We know that breast cancer doesn't just happen here in the US, it happens abroad as well. And actually, sadly so, many other countries are far, far, far behind us in education, awareness, and support of those patients. Many so much so that it's still shameful to have a breast cancer diagnosis. And in some countries, these women are kicked out of their homes and literally put on the streets because they are now deemed as broken. And this is a mission that we've set out for AnaOno to really start breaking down those barriers. And when Untours believed in us to offer their loan support to my growing business, it gave me the money to launch new collections that are still available in AnaOno today that help serve these patients in their recovery process. So I am eternally grateful to this organization for their help and support that they've given us throughout the years. It's been incredible. And that being said, you know, COVID has really shifted a lot of things for us. I'm happy and honored to say that our business is better now than it ever has been. But I think we needed a paradigm shift in the world of how we were serving these patients in the mastectomy environment. We have to understand still, yes, it's not our grandmother's disease anymore, but it's still largely impacting the population of females of 55 years and over. So not always is a 65-year-old woman shopping for her undergarments online. Maybe not an 85-year-old woman is shopping for her garments online. They all still need the support that we offer, we give. So our business has changed, but what has been interesting is that those customers that was such a hard part for us to reach, a harder customer to talk to and tell a story to because she was walking into our retail partners. Maybe she was going into one of our retail chains or one of our stores at Soma, because we're carried in Soma nationwide, which is about 120 stores. But we're also carried at durable medical equipment supply houses. So insurance is, insurance can cover a mastectomy bra, which is a huge benefit to a mastectomy patient. I can't cover that insurance, but somebody else can. But in reality, they're going in to buy their mastectomy bra next to a wheelchair and a bedpan. Not the most ideal customer experience, especially when you've been through what you've been through. And then there's specialty stores. I kind of call them the foundation store on Main Street, right? The lingerie store that has a little bit of everybody or everything for everybody. And we're carrying in a lot of those stores, but that's where that customer was going. That was her experience. We now are bringing her into our world online. And I'll take a minute to share my screen here. And share with you guys a little bit of what we are doing online, because what our story is online is so important and a disruptor to our space. Because AnaOno is more than just a bra, right? We know that. We know that the bra can change the way you feel, the way you heal, and the way your outlook will be on life. We know if you can heal better, right? Your entire process is better, from depression, from mindset, from body image, body confidence, femininity, all of these challenges we face uniquely so as breast cancer patients, because we are literally amputating parts of our bodies in order to stay alive. Not many cancers have to cut off body parts in order to stay here. So we know that this is a uniqueness to who we serve. And it's all about giving our user really, truly a moment to get to celebrate and see themselves. So you can see just here, you know, when I mentioned all of the different types of surgery, how different they really are, from breast reconstruction to mastectomy. This is Jamie. She has no breasts at all, right? She's using her breast forms. To Gina, who has a unilateral chest. To Asha, who's living flat and beautiful. To Jamil, who was diagnosed de novo, who never had to have a breast surgery, and is living au naturel. But beyond that, it's really about getting to see yourself on the other side of the screen, which has just been a huge, huge change for who we are as a company, but also who it is that we serve. Because if you are a patient living flat, and I'll pop in here because I think it's probably a little bit stronger to see it in a bigger picture. But, you know, if you are somebody who truly is living flat with flat closure, you know, and still wanting to feel beautiful in your own skin, you can really celebrate yourself, and you don't have to mimic what we call foobs, fake boobs, to the outside world. You get to be yourself. You get to celebrate your own skin, your own body. It's really the truest part of inclusion. And we like to call it boob inclusion, because my goal, not just as a brand, not just as a business, not just for who we serve, is that every single fit program that's offered by any major retailer or by any major brand must represent a mastectomy chest. We are nearly 4 million patients, 4 million women living here in the United States, and we are never represented, especially when it comes to lingerie and feeling sexy and looking sexy. And I personally have set out to change that, along with many, many now in the Army. But I think that this is just a beautiful representation of what, you know, our empowerment story is. What we want people to feel or express on the other side is that you can be flat and be beautiful, because the breasts don't define you. The way that you want to express yourself does. And that can come in many shapes, sizes, and forms. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to be happy in your own skin. And we want to empower you to get there. And that started, it's always been at the core of who AnaOno has been. It's a core of who I am. But what really catapulted this conversation was our first event at New York Fashion Week in 2017. My dear late friend, Champagne Joy, founder of #Cancerland, had the opportunity to do a New York Fashion Week benefit show for her organization, of which case the lead designer fell through. And she calls me and she says, Dana, I have this opportunity of a lifetime. She goes, would you ever do a New York Fashion Week show? I've been an industry professional my entire life. I've been in high fashion in New York City. All I know how to do is to make clothing. That's like me at my genuine, deepest down core. And I said to her, the first thing I said was, well, of course not, Champagne. What I do is not fashion. And she says, but that's not what it's about. It's about getting out there and telling a story. And at that point in time, she convinced me enough with her crazy to catapult my crazy to say yes. And we took the runway at New York Fashion Week and we stacked it with all breast cancer patients. And in doing so, I knew that something I was always challenged with AnaOno was getting people to understand why people with breast cancer needed a different bra. And the biggest part of that was that reconstructed breasts or missing breasts don't act like natural breasts. So if a traditional bra is meant to support natural breasts, and now we have a different need, you know, it's not a temporary need. This is a need for a lifetime. But what I realized was that people weren't talking about breast cancer. We were talking about a pink ribbon. We weren't talking about all the different types and subtypes of breast cancer. We weren't talking about genetic mutations. We weren't talking about risk factors or death rates or the real factors that are involved when you are a cancer patient. We did talk about a pink ribbon. We did talk about awareness, and we always showed the happy, older white woman smiling and cheering that she had conquered her breast cancer. I literally haven't met one of those women yet that is smiling because they have breast cancer. So I think that this is a very, very serious topic that has to be talked about. No more sweeping things underneath the rug. We're really here to shine a light on it. And in doing so, I realized that the reason why nobody knew why my bras needed to exist was because nobody actually knew what breast cancer looked like. So we said we were going to show the world, and we did. And when the producer of New York Fashion Week came up to me and told me that I had to assure him that there was going to be no nudity, at that point in time, the CFDA defines a female's nudity by the presence of her nipples. And so I promised him with my heart and soul that he would not see a nipple. Yep. I delivered. So what the world saw that day, though, was bodies that had scars on them, that didn't have nipples, maybe had breasts, maybe didn't have breasts. But in that moment, the New York Times captured our runway show, put it online an hour after the show. We had gone viral within hours because just nobody had seen breast cancer in that level of a conversation, with that boldness, with that strength, with that passion of all of those patients that were on that runway, from young to old, from flat to implant reconstruction, from all different walks of life. It was just really such an empowering place to be. And I think what I didn't necessarily realize I was doing was being a voice for the community. I was just helping share my story. But in doing so, I realized how important it was to share those stories. And I'll say this because fast forward to today, in 2017, when I did that runway show, the first question out of every reporter's mouth was, how did you find such a diverse runway? And I'm thinking to myself, this is just 2017. And my answer every time back to the reporter was, well, I don't even know. These people all have cancer. I didn't realize at that point, and I was like, cancer doesn't discriminate. Cancer affects all of us. So don't all of us need to be represented? That's a part of the story. And I know that that's why I was lost as a young woman, being sent to the mastectomy store, being sent to these mastectomy bras, and only seeing an older woman looking back at me, or a professional model with a healthy chest and healthy breasts and a healthy life, one of which I no longer had. And that was why from the onset, I had committed to give our patients a voice in this space, because I knew how triggered I was when I saw a healthy model looking back at me, of which case I no longer felt like I was that person. I definitely know I didn't have cleavage anymore, but there was just this reality to say, you're selling me something, not even on somebody that you're telling me that it works for specifically. And so every single one of these beautiful faces behind me are all breast cancer patients or have been affected in some way, shape, or another, maybe undergoing a preventative surgery to help prevent a cancer diagnosis from happening. But fast forward to 2020 and where we are today, and the extreme disparities that we face, both systemically and through our medical system. And we knew immediately, even though we had many, many projects leading up to these moments of our societal focus and shift onto Black Lives Matter, which is so incredibly important, that we also had to use this to shine a light on our Black and African American counterparts that have a 40% higher death rate than their white counterparts, and all of the challenges that we face within our own disparities in our own community, especially within medicine. So we've all started several different initiatives. We've bound together from organizations on levels I've never seen before. And I'm so proud and honored to get to sit at these tables and help pushing these conversations forward. We reside here in Philadelphia, in Kensington. And as we were just talking before the show, my husband called me, and he kind of knows he's not supposed to call me during the day because I'm on Zooms all day. And and chances are I won't be able to pick it up. But, you know, there was the reality to know that there is unrest here in the city, of which case we live among and we live amongst. And running and operating a business in that environment, right, is incredibly stressful because you need to keep your employees safe. You need to keep your house in order. But we are up against some very, very real challenges. I mean, when the riots were happening here in the city, we still had to come into the office to process and ship our orders. And we knew the riots were moving around. So we had to, you know, only bring in who we needed to bring in, keep those at home that would be safe at home, leave at earlier hours, especially here during COVID, operating a business amongst, you know, that looming threat as well, has definitely put different stressors on us in ways and business leaders than what we've ever experienced. But I also know that there are strengths that get built out of these challenges. And I know that there is opportunity coming on the other side. And that helps shape young leaders. It helps shape young businesses. And it helps improve the lives of those around us. So I haven't taken a breath for 28 minutes. So I hope you guys all ingest that. But please, 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 if you have a question, unmute yourself, engage, write it in the chat, however you feel comfortable. But I do just say I'm very, very thankful and gracious and honored to share this space with you all. And I hope and appreciate that you've learned a little bit, if not a lot, about breast cancer in the last few minutes. And I'm full of lots and lots of statistics. So whatever you need from me. But thank you so much for letting me explain the business a little bit, and I'll open it up for questions, if we have any.
I might ask a question. Just quickly, I was curious on the sustainability angle that you covered earlier on around planting a tree, right, to kind of offset some of the material side of the equation. So I think, you know, really important, and I would imagine that resonates with both investors and customers. But at the same side, there's a cost to that, right? You could not do that and would assume your bottom line wouldn't be affected by having to spend that money to plant trees. So have you gotten any pushback or skepticism from any investor as you're thinking about your business over time on that type of approach and that angle of sustainability?
I listen, that's a great question, because my raw materials cost more than most, right? So I hit it at the very, very bottom level. I think I'm also fortunate that I started a business in the early part of 2010s, right? Because there was so much sustainability movement happening at that point. Like, you really didn't start a business if you weren't doing something environmentally conscious. It's like, you know, it was the era of Toms. It was the era of like, here's a cotton t-shirt, we've planted a tree in a forest. Here's a water bottle, we're saving rivers, right? It had to have a component somewhere in your business model. What was really interesting to me though, is I felt like it's just equally as important to make those decisions up front, because then you know how to deal with the margins. So my Model material, because it actually is certified. There is Model out there that is not certified. They do not have that practice in place. They treat it just like a rayon, which it is, material that is a cellulose from a tree. That's the same thing that bamboo comes from, all of these different places. My material costs are probably 3 times my competitors, but I know I've saved money in other places. And also when you're small, I think your margin structure is a bit more focused in scale. The pressure from my investors is going to be raise your price or reduce your cost of goods to make more margin. And I think that now that we're as an established brand, we have a better opportunity to raise our price than to lower the quality of our product, because lowering the quality of our product is not something I want to offer as a business and as a brand, because that means something to me. But it's also, you know, from the choices of where we produce. We produce in Medellin, Colombia, not in China, where we have social labor laws that protect the workers. They have environmental impact initiatives of their own that are some of the best in the world. So some of our factories are zero waste factories. And again, that makes me paying them a little bit more, but when it's built in, it's easier to move. I mean, we're changing all of our poly bags over to compostable poly bags because we have to keep our goods protected. Unfortunately, there's not a better way to ensure safety to our healing patients if we don't have our garments sealed. But even our mailers out to our consumers, we're converting those all into compostable and recyclable paper. So as the world has gotten better, as e-commerce has continued to push forward, we actually have more options to be sustainable today than what I did even when I started the business in 2010.
Great.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
I might ask a question.
Yeah, sure, Julia. Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much for what you do. It's incredibly inspiring. And I'm sure you offer a lot of inspiration and hope for a lot of women. So I was curious if there's any kind of community component associated with this business. I would imagine that many of your customers are going through similar experiences. Has there been any kind of movement around community-based events? Of course, during COVID, that's tough, but just curious how that's evolved and if that's given you ideas for any additional follow-on products.
Yeah, so community is actually a lot to us. I kind of describe us as a 3-pillar approach: community, content, and commerce. So community is the initiative to bring everybody together, engage them, share stories that other people can relate to. Our slogan is #NeverAlone. And that's because, you know, receiving a diagnosis or going through an experience like this can be incredibly isolating. And we want them to know that we hear these stories every day and there's probably somebody like you. The content is our responsibility as a leader in this space to educate and advocate with appropriateness to make sure that the community is there and safe as well, right? Those kind of blend together. Of course, commerce is explanatory. But what's interesting now in so many years of business was, and really where we took the website, this is actually a great place to kind of talk about this too, is something we really wanted to make sure that we did was talk to all breast surgeries, because what we've identified in time, I set out to make a line for breast cancer because that was my experience, but my experience is breast surgery. We now are addressing all versions of breast surgery, including a very strong trans community. So even though I talk about breast cancer in a point of view as a natural born or at birth female, like really the conversation is women X, right? Because everybody has a chance of receiving a cancer diagnosis, no matter your spot or where you're at. But we've really tried to give our users options to follow the paths that they have chosen. So even we have here a shop by treatment. And the shop by treatment is from preparing for an upcoming surgery. So that's any breast surgery. That could be a trans surgery. It could be reduction surgery. It could be an elective cosmetic surgery. Through radiation, which is obviously a very specific breast cancer treatment, to post-surgery options that keep you recovering well, to those that have explanted. So the explant is upon us. And there's a big chunk of individuals that undergo explant surgeries, either A, from getting sick from them, from breast implant illness, those that have had their implants in since the 80s and 90s and even potentially early 2000s, that have now grown many, many years with their breast implants, but they don't want them anymore. These are all options and issues that we're facing. And just recently, we hope that through here, we can even identify more specific parts of our community that we're already addressing, whether that be the reduction patient or the cosmetic implant patient or the trans patient as well, because these are all unique needs that are addressed by broadening the community and being very brave to share these stories. Of which case we just had a customer email us a few weeks ago that came from Finland. And she explained to us that she was detransitioning. So she almost 30 years ago had transitioned from female to male, and now she was detransitioning back to female nearly 30 years later. And I thought it was such a powerful word to use at such a pivotal moment for us because we hadn't launched our new website yet. And her email to us said, "I hope I'm not intruding." Mm. And those were very important words because our community is that you are never alone. and you should be welcome no matter what your circumstances are. And this started very, very early on in my brand's life cycle, because these stories were coming to us, because these communities were used to shopping for bras for mastectomy, because of the pads, because of the pockets. And when she wrote us the email and she told us the story of how she's been exiled from community after community after community through her life journey, and then to ask politely to come into our world, just proved to me ever so much that we have to keep pushing, and we have to keep going harder, and we have to keep going deeper, because there's always going to be too much work to do, and we're never done. So I think it was a big learning lesson, not just for me knowing that we were heading in the right direction, but for my staff to see an email like that come in from a consumer firsthand, where we were all affected by the story she shared. So much so that she gave us 2 reviews. One review that was really, really nice and lighthearted and would have sounded like any other consumer off the street, to another review about how she really felt. And in her reply to us was, "It's okay if you don't post this review, because I don't want my community to come under attack at you either." And to understand that that's that social battle that person is engaged with on a daily. But it, there's things that we've learned, like our verbiage on our website is completely gender neutral. Even though all of our models do identify as women, our verbiage is gender neutral. Which, takes time for you to get there. It takes your training to your staff. It takes training to those around you. It takes training when you're in a media interview to talk about people and patients and not just women. So it's a huge part. That community learning for us is ongoing for sure.
Great, thank you. That's incredible.
Now I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I think when you think about the community of breast cancer survivors, there are so many amazing nonprofits who work in this space and who support people who, are part of this community. I'm curious to know, do you partner with any of those nonprofits? And if so, what does that partnership look like?
Yeah, so partnering with nonprofit is in our core as well. I actually started the business where we would benefit a portion of our sales over to trusted organizations. At that point, I'd actually really realized sort of how twisted the nonprofit world can be as well. I would say one organization specifically who is currently making news waves because of a lot of patient advocacy and challenges that we have put forth in front of them, rejected my donations for patients that they serve. They told me I didn't have enough money to give them money. And in that moment, I was shocked, and I had peeked behind the curtain of what nonprofit can be. And I really sought out the right partners. And what I found more so, when we serve the community of which nonprofits are also serving, we learned very early on, and again, this is because the business started in the early 2010s, kind of similar back to where Mark was at. If you didn't have that one up on your business, you really couldn't launch a business just for profit. You had to be mindful, socially conscious, environmentally conscious. So of course I was giving back a portion of my money to these organizations. Well, because I was serving the same person, the customer said to me, "How are you giving these organizations 10% when I need the 10%? I'm the one diagnosed with breast cancer. I'm the one who's paying my bills every day. I'm the one that doesn't have any money in their pocket. Yes, do I use their services? I do. But if you could give me a better price, that's more important." And I listened to that, because then I realized my role in community activism was to be that, an activist. So what we're able to do is we're able to use our marketing budgets and money that we have to serve our community and do major events like New York Fashion Week. To date, we've raised over $350,000 for stage 4 metastatic breast cancer research. At this point in time in my, in my life cycle, I could have never donated that money, right? It's like, one day I hope I can. I want to write my own check, but for now, because of who I am and what the brand is, we can give a platform to then engage people, the community and the supporters, to give their money to places that we know it's needed most. And that's been a bit of our shift, is we use our brand to support the community through a nonprofit. And we have a bra donation program where if you're in financial distress and you're preparing for a surgery, you can receive a bra donated from Pink Warrior Angels Hill Country. We just partnered with Natrel, who makes breast implants. They've bought 300 bras. So for every bra that's purchased, sort of like the top model, we're donating one to somebody that's been newly diagnosed in the last year. So there's always ways that we can leverage who we are and who we serve in benefit of also the nonprofits and organizations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Dana, there are 2 questions in the chat from Roberta. The first is, what was your startup cost?
Oh, whew. Okay, Roberta, great question. On the books, my startup cost was $150,000. So that was, that startup cost was really, it was my first investment in my first production round. It was all of my R&D and development. It was the technical things I needed around me, like the computer and the sewing machine. Because at first I was making all my initial samples and then I was manufacturing here in the US. So, you know, the startup cost was to get all of those materials, to build the infrastructure, to get the apps, to build the website, to do the photo shoots, like all of the things on the books was about 150. If I was to back out of what was probably on the books, that number is really likely closer to 175 to 200.
The second question is, how did Untours make the decision to invest in you? So I guess that's for me.
That's for you.
I forget who introduced us, but
Is it the Aunts and Uncles organization? There was
Judy Wix's, maybe?
yes, and it was the event down in town. Hold on, I will remember her name. I'll get there. But yes.
Zoe, was it Zoe, maybe?
Zoe did make a secondary introduction. Fatima, her boutique down in Old City.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
It was her event, and then I got introduced to you.
Yes. So you weren't, as you mentioned earlier, you weren't our usual fit. We look for businesses that often hire returning citizens from prison or drug rehab, and businesses in the global South, and other kinds of metrics. But I was intrigued, and I came to your studio with my awesome board member, Pat Beecham, and we were both blown away by your moxie, by the activism you were doing, and by the change in conversation you were bringing to breast cancer. And that's a perfect fit for us. Businesses that are raising the bar, changing the standard, changing the conversation. So it was a no-brainer at that point. And I'll add to the conversation, Pat further came to the New York Fashion Week in 2018. And when she came home from your show, I said, tell me about the new fashions. And she burst out laughing and said, Elizabeth, I didn't even see the fashions. I was so moved by the cancer patients who were modeling, by their confidence, by their empowerment, and by how much they love Dana. She said, I didn't see a single item. You have to send me back so I can give you a full report. But I thought that was such a metaphor for you, Dana.
It is, because I'll be honest, at my first New York Fashion Week as a fashion designer, when all of these articles came out, and every article was one of our topless models. So one of our models that exposed a mastectomy scar on stage, and not all of them did it right at the beginning. Some of them came revealed later. And I was like, this media is great. This press is great. And you think this whole world is going to change. And I realized, and then I told everybody, I'm like, but my bras aren't in the article. But, you know, like that was really, that moment too was another monumental shift in our business, because that's when I realized it wasn't about the bra. It was about the story. It was about these patients' stories. It was about their lives. It is about the scars. It is about the trauma. It is about these things, but that's okay because it's beautiful. And it's a story. And sadly and unfortunately, we all likely know a person with breast cancer. And there's very few people that have been completely 100% unaffected. And with education comes power. And if we had the opportunity to educate, we were going to do it every single time. And in 2019 was our show of all stage 4 metastatic breast cancer patients. I really thought the media was ready to say these models are dying from breast cancer. We wanted that tagline out in the world. We wanted people to know that breast cancer is still an incredibly fatal diagnosis, of which 1 of 3 will metastasize, which is the only fatal version of breast cancer. And we don't share those stats because those stats are scary. And it is not a gambling game that you want to play. And since then, 1 year ago, median lifespan, 36 months, 21 models, a third is gone. And that's our reality. And that's the story that is the scary story that can be told beautifully. And each of their stories have been represented. There's a documentary on Amazon that's named after our show, Not Just One. Allergan, the pharmaceutical company, produced it for us. If you can download it, the fee to download the documentary goes to Medivivor, the organization that funds stage 4 research. But it does give you a little glimpse into the life of these models and these patients, of whom have been affected fatally by their breast cancer diagnosis.
Oh.
And not always easy to talk about. I will say, you know, when we are as strong as we are because of who I am for most of the part, and not shying away from these really hard topics, we do have customers that will come out and tell us that they have to stop following us during the month of February because we talk too much about stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. And there is this stark reality to say, not everybody wants to hear this. Not everybody wants to digest the information. But what I really love is when they come back, and sadly, some of them come back because they've progressed and they say, I get it now. I wish I would have listened sooner. But some come back and say, I've unfollowed you every year, but now I'm ready to learn. And that's our role. Our role is to change that perspective, because when you know more, you can advocate better, you can be smarter about your own health decisions, and you can help people around you. That's it, you know? So it doesn't come without cost to us, really, to be so loud in a way. Oh, another one for Roberta. You're good in the chat, Roberta. Okay, so where are we going? Will you also sell just bras for those of us who just want to feel, yeah, how good your material? So the great news about our bras was that I needed a different bra because of my body type. It doesn't mean that you need a different bra because of your body type. So part of what we're doing as a growing brand as well is helping to have the conversation about wearing a good, comfortable bra. I also think COVID has kind of opened up the door for us to have this conversation in ways. We know one thing, bras don't cause breast cancer. However, what we do know is bras do affect your lymphatic flow system, which in all is a healthier way to live if your lymphatic system is constantly flushing itself out, therefore rejuvenating cells, therefore keeping your body in a better state of health. So if an underwire bra or a tight band or some of these things are actually stalling and stagnant, like making that flow stagnant, that can in essence affect your health. We don't know if it causes breast cancer. The doctors say no, but you know, our medical professionals sitting on the other side say this is a problem. Same thing for bad deodorants, things like that. So we just want to have the conversation that you know, healthy breast health is important. It's about knowing your own body. It's about touching your breasts. It's about doing your exams. Most cancers are found by the patient themselves. Most lumps are detected on your own, not through a screening device, not through a mammogram. So this is very important. And again, not things that we talk about because we prefer to let people feel comfortable going to their annual mammograms, even though at best they're poor detection tools or diagnostic tools. So it's a challenge for us as a community. But yes, Roberta, email me, I'll give you a discount code. Or not. Depends on if you need it.
Dana, can you tell the story of Inc. magazine?
Oh, yeah. So I don't even have a copy here handy, but if I did, I'll tell a very funny story. And Elizabeth, I'm not even sure if you know this. But I did raise a seed round for my organization, and we'll be looking to raise our Series A in about Q1 or Q2 of next year. And I had an investor that was sitting at the table, and he asked me very inappropriately, if he were to Google me, would there be any, is there anything that he should be prepared for? And he used three very provocative, not appropriate scenarios that my name would pop up for in the internet. But it dawned on me that I did have to tell him that there were topless photos of me on the internet. The reason being, some things you do and you don't actually think about the repercussions, but this was not repercussions. So in my story, my life as a 27-year-old patient, there's different processes that you go through as a reconstruction. One of them is recreating the nipples that have now been cut out and removed from your body, because they are attached to the lymphatic system and they can have nerve endings that end, and they can be a danger to the cancer cells that might still reside in your breast. So in 2010, we weren't conserving nipples. It was not progressive enough. If the surgeon tried to conserve your nipple, of which case it was removed during surgery, put into a petri dish to then later be attached to your body, the surgeons had a very little success rate, which meant that said nipple would die and fall off your body. Sounds very graphic and gross and disgusting. Trust me, it is. So I was like, this seems really bizarre that this is the choice that you are giving me. And I said, well, what else is next? I said, well, you can tattoo on your areola, because when you look at yourself in the mirror, you're going to want to see the nipple, because the nipple gives your eye a place to land other than looking at the scar. It also helps you feel normal. Well, I thought all of these things compiled up against each other were not normal at all. So why am I trying to try to feel normal when none of this is clearly normal? You just told me that a nipple could fall off my body. Like, hold the brakes. So I leave the doctor's office, I take a deep breath, and I say, well, if we could tattoo on nipples, can't I tattoo on whatever I want? And this is when if you guys can't tell already, I'm a rule breaker. So this is a problem in my life. So I go out to the tattoo world, of which case I only have one tattoo at this point. And I start asking tattoo artists if they could I explained to them that I had breast reconstruction, that I have no nipples, and I want to know if they can tattoo over my implants. And some said no. Some said no at this time. And I eventually found one who told me that this was not the weirdest tattoo he had ever done. So I totally knew it was my guy. And I had this beautiful tree of life that was tattooed around my chest. Well, when I launched AnaOno and I had a press team, they said, well, is there anything else we could be talking about? I said, well, I have these pictures of from 4 years ago when I sort of documented my tattoos on my body. I said, maybe you want to see. Overnight, my personal story attached then to AnaOno goes viral and goes everywhere. And I'm literally one of the first bodies represented on Google, on the internet, that has mastectomy tattoos. Fast forward to 2020, the world is full of mastectomy tattoos, and we are proud to be a part of that movement. But when Inked magazine called, they wanted to do a story on mastectomy tattoos for their issue, and they had 12 of us that all had mastectomy tattoos of one way, shape, or another, and flew us to New York, did this incredible campaign. And from there, it just really empowered. I mean, my story is take your own life, do what's best for you, do what's best for your body and your mind. And all I knew was that I could not look in the mirror at myself until I received those tattoos. That was the only time I was able to digest what it was that I was seeing looking back at me. And I wanted not the pain and the suffering and the trauma to be there to remind me every morning. I wanted something beautiful that I could celebrate and feel empowered with. So much so that my tattoo is tattooed in the shape of a demi bra, because I could not find a bra that fit my body. And then I realized, if I'm going to such extreme measures to tattoo on the lines of a beautiful bra, why not just make a beautiful bra? And i.e. AnaOno. But the tattoo came before AnaOno, actually, surprisingly enough. So that is my famous cover story of Inked magazine.
We have time for one more quick question.
Well, this is not a question, but I have to say, Dana, this was like the best use of time today. I learned so much from this conversation, and I thought that I knew a lot about breast cancer, and I clearly didn't because I'm taking a lot of like facts and concepts away from this that I just didn't carry with me before. So I can't thank you enough for your time. This was really eye-opening for me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was my one job I needed to do today. So I thank you for that.
I don't know how to wind this up, and I think I'm going to show a photo. See if I can pull it up on the screen share. Can you all see this? So,
that's my boy.
this is Dana's dog, and I just had to laugh, Dana, when you said you're not a rule follower, because Hooch is so much like you. You had just told him that he wasn't allowed on the sofa, and he decided to jump up on the sofa and steal a kiss. This is the moment before the kiss. So I just, I think he clinched the deal to invest.
There you go. Everybody have a really handsome dog when you put Elizabeth around. It is the deal.
Right.
He is the star of the show, no doubt. He has stolen every movie, documentary, interview I've ever been a part of. Hooch like it's the Gold Star Award for best wingman.
Well, he's got your moxie and your love, and I can't thank you enough. You're just, I mean, you're such an awesome person, and you just model what we look for in businesses. So we're so proud of you. We're so proud of AnaOno. So, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Glenn Mead. And thank you everyone for coming.